Say hello, everybody. We having a good time?
All players, your
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true. There's nothing of importance on the 6 o'clock news, and I believe that it's time to rally all the people with their free thinking minds, and we'll say, oh no.
Step into Kayfabe Cards, your ultimate destinations for all things tabletop in Riverton, Utah. Uniting enthusiasts under one roof, we proudly showcase Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, Magic, Weiss, and One Piece, a gateway into an exhilarating universe of gaming. Immerse yourselves in our diverse products, including a very squishy array of Japanese plushies and the excitement of Gashapon machines. Our expansive play area invites you to duel in epic battles and forge unbreakable bonds with your fellow players. We open our doors every day at noon, embracing a realm where cards come alive and unforgettable moments are forged. Come join us at Kayfabe Cards.
The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes back the founder, the godfather himself of the game we all love and adore. It would be Mr. James White. How are you, James?
I'm good. You're too kind, Matt. Thank you for having me back on the show. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I know that it took a little bit of extra time because there's a big announcement that occurred, which we will get to. But yeah, the too kind part. I mean, nobody hears what we talk about before I hit the record button, where we're just throwing barbs at people and talking about Yanji Lee at a poker table, which he's a different animal, I'll tell you that much. But let's talk real quick about this brand new announcement, which is the Round Table, this new product that is out, which is essentially UPF centric. And I want to quickly ask you about the essentially the conception of this idea all the way through till it's and partnering with the professor up to where we are now, where it just got announced essentially like an hour ago.
Yeah, sure. So, look, Flesh and Blood is like super strong when it comes to competitive play. Like hands down, we have the best global competitive play circuit in the world. If you want to play the game and see the world, Flesh and Blood is the best way to do that. But there's so many other ways to play TCGs, and that's one of the beautiful things about trading card games in general, is there's just so many different ways that you can enjoy it. And of course, social gaming is a really big part of that. And Round the Table is our first foray really into creating and crafting a product specifically for that social play dynamic. And the way that the decks have been designed and developed, it really does just to completely lean into creating that really dynamic, free-flowing multiplayer experience. When it comes to our collaboration with the professor, he really is one of the world's, if not the greatest advocate of social play. And it's been a real privilege to be able to partner with him on this and to get him behind the product. And he really does a tremendous job for the entire industry of promoting social play, and just people coming together from all walks of life, sitting around the table and enjoying each other's company through a love of playing great games. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, man.
So I know that I got inundated with dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of questions for you. So I want to get through as much of this as possible, give as much information to the community as I can, so I can squeeze out of you, James. And one of which is people are inquiring about when they heard about these UPF products, etc., and there was hundreds of new cards or 100 new cards coming out, the legality of these cards in other formats. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the cards are legal in all formats. Some of them will be quite significant in some of the tournament formats. But the product has been designed specifically for UPF, for multiplayer gaming. But yeah, look, there's new support for some old favorites like the Crouching Tiger archetype, and Guardian gets a shiny new pair of boots that I'm sure a lot of players will be stoked to see. On the surface, it is a multiplayer card and it's been designed specifically for multiplayer, but it's definitely going to find a home in some CC decks around the place, I'm sure.
So another product that's coming out is going to be Bright Lights. And Bright Lights, I think, is something that a lot of people are definitely excited for, especially the mechanologist people out there who, especially Rachel Stoddard, aka Dash herself, who just crushed it at the Nats cosplay contest.
Amazing. Stunning.
Terrifying, frankly, to be up there with it. I mean, I was front row center on that one. But yeah, she was awesome. But she's excited for Bright Lights. But I will be completely honest with you, not a lot of people are excited about Bright Lights because of the hero-centric nature of the set, which is it is predominantly a mechanologist set. And because of that, there might be certain players who, I don't want to say are going to skip out on it necessarily, but ultimately might not buy the product or might just take a break or see what's what. Is there a concern from LSS's side and your side where these hero-centric sets might have not the same appeal to the grander audience?
Yeah, but I'd say that that's exactly the reason why we introduced the expansion slot into this product, so that there is content that appeals to a wider range of interests. So I think players across the spectrum will get something out of Bright Lights for sure. Just what I would say is that we like to create product experiences that are unique, and doing a single class set is something that we've never done before. Certainly not without risks. For sure, some people probably won't like it. That's okay. A lot of people are going to absolutely love it. But I think that it offers something very unique. And, for us as game designers, I think that, pushing the boundaries and creating these very different kinds of gaming experience, but particularly in the context of booster draft, and seal deck is just important. And you've seen the Crack Shuffle Play 3-pack. It was part of a major part of that initial announcement. This product configuration allowed us to innovate in that respect, which is such a fun way to play Flesh and Blood, man. Just like the easiest way to start playing. Like literally crack open 3-packs, remove the tokens, shuffle up and play. So I think that these sorts of risks are worth taking from time to time to break new ground in the product engineering and design areas. And I would just ask players who are maybe on the fence, just give it a try. Maybe mechanologist isn't your favorite class, but just give it a try because it's still Flesh and Blood at its best when it comes to sitting down and playing great games.
So the other question about that is that you mentioned that sometimes it's about taking a risk or trying new things, and not everybody will like it. I mean, that's the truth about, frankly, any set. You can say that about anything that's come out in the past. And but is there plans already set for other class-specific, very centric sets, or is this something where, you know what, we'll do this, we'll see what the response is, we'll see what the outcome is, and maybe we'll revisit it? Or is this something you guys are dead set on revisiting with, let's say, a ninja-centric set or a guardian-centric set?
I'm pretty sure that we'll do this model again in the future, but absolutely we'll be keeping a close eye on how people feel about it, what the response is. And just take it from there. But it is a compelling product structure for us. It offers something quite unique, and internally we've as a team we've really enjoyed playing booster draft, especially with this single class set. And we'll put it out there to the community. They can deep dive into it, let us know what they think. I'm sure that they will, and we'll assess things and go from there.
But you're saying there's going to be stuff for Guardian stands like myself. There's going to be stuff for Ninja players. There'll be trinkets in there that we can look forward to, right?
Absolutely. The expansion slot is providing new content across the class spectrum. So there's bits and pieces for the other classes for sure. And there's some really, really powerful, exciting cards in the expansion slot.
Lovely.
Not all of them, but some of them.
That's fine with me. Don't worry about it. As long as I get something to smash face with on my Bravo. So the other question is going to be pertaining to meta. Meta is oftentimes the biggest challenge, especially a game that has entered into year 3, 4, 5, etc. Balancing a meta, especially without something like a standard rotation, it's such a complex equation. There's so many variables to take account of. But I find that Flesh and Blood is a game that has, at this current moment, has such a fluctuating meta. It is constantly turbulent, and one week to the next, the information is constantly changing. And even from that this past weekend, we saw, we were there. I was there at a 522 tournament, 522 player tournament in the US that was predominantly populated by the usual suspects. You had your Lexis, etc. But in other countries, there were other heroes at the exact same time with the exact same variables that were representing mostly Bravos or mostly this or mostly that. Is there no true solidified meta in Flesh and Blood? And was that perhaps an objective that you had all along?
So I think that there is a meta, and there's a very clear best deck to beat, which is Lexi, and there's a cluster of other tier 1 decks, such as Icelander, Bravo, probably Dromai, and a few others. But the beautiful thing is that the gap between these best decks and the rest of the field is, well, much of the rest of the field is very slim. So if you're a specialist at playing Kano or Dorinthia or Rhinar or whatever your weapon of choice is, you legitimately can sit down at a tournament, and if you play exceptionally, take down these top decks. I think that the current meta is in a really, really healthy spot. We saw, at the start of Dusk Till Dawn season, Icelander coming out and winning everything. And then, in the sort of week or two leading into nationals, like Lexi sort of surged back and picked up a few wins. And then, of course, at week 1 of national champs, we've seen Briar ascend to living legend by taking down the US national champs and doing so in a very innovative way. We saw Dorinthia, we saw Kano take down big tier 1 national championships. If you look at the Living Legend leaderboard update that went up yesterday, Kano actually won 2 nationals last week. He picked up 50 Living Legend points. Dorinthia picked up 40 from winning a big nationals. And then, there was wins for heroes, across a wide portion of that leaderboard. So I think that we're in a great meta. I think that there is a meta, though. Like, you need to be able to go, if you're going to a tournament, you need to be able to go there prepared to play against and beat these top echelon of decks, Lexi in particular. If you don't have a plan against Lexi, you're probably not going to do particularly well. But I think that as far as balancing the meta and crafting a enjoyable meta, the team internally have done a great job. And it's taken us some time to build out this really competent development team, and we're in a great stable state. We've got an incredibly talented group of people in house, and I just think that we're getting better at designing and developing and refining the game to create really enjoyable playing and viewing experiences, to be frank.
And beyond that, though, I feel like there's looking back, obviously Briar just getting propelled into living legend status. Oldham wasn't far ahead of her, and now you've got Lexi, who is on this warpath that is right up against it, and Icelander as well. And what I want to just put focus on here is the potency of Tales of Aria specifically and Ice Heroes. I think that set, which I said is that I really, really like, has just separated itself as being like, hey, this has always been a very high-powered set, and we're now seeing all those heroes cross over into the Living Legend status. And Icelander is another ice-related hero. Those types of talents, is this something that is now perhaps LSS is wary about in terms of revisiting ice, revisiting elemental-related talents?
Without a doubt, the elemental heroes have cast a very long shadow over the game since the release of Tales of Aria. And I would say that Tales of Aria and Everfest were the 2 sets that we designed and developed under the absolute most challenging COVID lockdown conditions in New Zealand. And we were also a much younger, less developed company back then. We had a much smaller development team, and it was always in flux. There was really only 2 sort of stalwarts at that point, being Chris Gearing and Jason Chung, and sort of everyone else that was part of that development process was either had just joined us or on temporary contracts and things like that. So we were very much finding our feet in terms of a development team at that time. So look, we did our best under some challenging circumstances. And as I mentioned previously, we've just really solidified that team and in a great steady state now, and it's reflected in the outcomes of our products that we're putting out there. But saying that, we've still had sort of like this lingering specter of Tales of Aria in particular that sort of casts its shadow over everything else that's come since then. And yeah, without a doubt, there is imbalances and sort of like power level issues with that set. I think that the game is hugely better since Oldhim ascended to Living Legend, just in terms of enjoyability and in terms of viewing the game on live streams. I think that uh, once Lexi rotates, or more accurately, once Voltaire rotates from the format, it's going to be positive as well. That bow in particular was really, really pushing. To be fair, like, we intentionally juiced up that bow because Ranger was just the dog of our game at that point in time. Like, no one could win a game with Azalea for a very long time, and we just kind of wanted to give the Ranger class a shot of adrenaline, and Voltaire was that. Um, but sort of like the lingering effect of that is like just this weapon is way better than weapons should be in Flesh and Blood. So I think that but don't get me wrong, I think that Lexi is a very uh she's in a good spot. She is the best deck, but there's so much game against Lexi and enough inherent variance with that hero that she isn't oppressive. She's incredibly good, and I think that she's a very beautiful deck as well. I really enjoy watching games being played with and against Lexi. She just does a lot of very interesting, synergy-driven plays. So I think that she's a very beautiful deck, and a really good best deck to have uh, for the health of the game. But she is oppressive in respect to Voltaire's just better than what other heroes have access to. So I think the game post Voltaire will also be positive for allowing other aggro slanted decks to get a foot in the door. Um, and look, just once we've sort of cleared the decks of this residue of elemental heroes, I think that Icelander, she may even Living Legend during national season. If not, it'll certainly be in the ProQuest season following it. And I think that Lexi is quite likely to have ascended to Living Legend by the conclusion of ProQuest that follows national season. And for me, I kind of look at it as being like, okay, that'll be sort of the sun setting on generation one of Flesh and Blood design and development philosophy. And then all of this work that we've done, which is out in the wild at the moment, that maybe isn't really shining through in the results. Those heroes will rise to the top. And that's one of the intentional and beautiful things about the Living Legend system is the cream rises to the top, then the next wave of best decks gets to rise up. And those best decks tomorrow are your midfield decks today. And I think that that's like a really elegant way of having, soft rotation in our game.
I agree, and you just touch upon something that I wanted to just throw in there, which was you're mentioning about how she might not be oppressive. She is the best deck, and this is the one argument I always give to people is that if you eliminate the best deck, something else will be the best deck, and something else will essentially attract the ire and the disdain and complaints of many. But there is some credence to what they say, wherein something being oppressive and something being strong. There's a distinction there, but it's also a fine line. And I'm wondering how, what kind of strategies you have. Is it just the bands and balances in that regard of keeping something from being ultimately oppressive? And I feel the angst perhaps from some of the community where it's like they're just done dealing with the strength of Lexi. But I mean, living through the Starvo meta, living through the Chain meta, there was always a deck that felt strong. And if you're approaching this from this is generation one, does that mean that moving forward decks are not going to be on that particular power level? You're not going to be printing heroes that might have the access to things like the flexibility and potency of Voltaire or the elements?
The thing is, like a general rule of thumb, it's about making heroes work a little bit harder for action points or go again. Voltaire just gives you action points too freely. I just would say though, like, I think that Lexi's so popular. Like we're seeing the data. Like she's just a very loved hero. And to be honest, a good amount of her conversion rate comes from just how popular the hero is. Um, and, you see things like the calling top 8 from last weekend. 4 Lexies in the top 8, but she was like the most played hero by far. You get to the top 8, and 3 of them are knocked out in the quarterfinal. Euclid Bender went on to win the whole thing, but like my point is that 50% of the top 8 was Lexi, and 3 out of 4 Lexi's got knocked out in the quarters. Like she's good, she's really, really good. She is the best deck, but she isn't oppressively good. She got knocked out in their quarters by non-Lexi players. So I just think that she's actually a pretty healthy element in the meta game. But saying that, I am looking forward to Ice leaving the game for a period of time, and I think that Ice has an important part to play. It's important that there are some checks and balances against hyper-aggressive decks and decks that are trying to cheat on like the pitch density in their builds. Like it is good that there's things that kind of incentivize or push decks to play more blues, for example. So in that respect, I think that Ice can be positive. I think that we've had Ice at the top of the metagame and leaderboards for a long time. I think it's going to be refreshing to have a reprieve from, the Ice mechanic for a while. And when we bring back a future Ice hero, maybe they won't be based on frostbites. They'll be doing something different.
Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
Being surprised about some of the designs and the innovations from the community, is there anything that ever kind of strikes you saying like, wow, you know what? Like I never thought that this was where the community was going to take this deck or this idea. You and Brian, out there when you guys are designing decks, you must have ideas of how decks might eventually coalesce down the line or what might appear at tournaments. But has there been anything out there currently that is catching you and Brian off guard as saying, wow, we didn't even think of this, and this is such a great way to sort of present these ideas that we put together?
The only one that really comes to mind is Wounded Bull probably wasn't a card that was on our radar to be a world championship winning card. So yeah, jamming in those Wounded Bulls and other big hitting 3/7s into Icelander was probably a little bit off the radar. But in general, our boys, our team do a good job of identifying what the best decks are. And if anything, I think that there's decks that the community hasn't discovered more. So I think there's more surprising than the things that they have discovered. But yeah, Michael Hamilton and his Bull Lander was, that was some good innovation.
I always tell people, I'm like, the next big card might actually be the bookmark you're using right now, or just like it's propping up your coffee table from wobbling. You never know. You never know what's in your box of chaff. Like that's the thing. And that's what I like about it is that there's no card. A card might not be great now, but you never know. Like there's nothing worth tossing out. There's nothing that's useless. It's just a matter of time sometimes.
Charles Dunn just won the US Nationals with Raging Onslaught.
I was about to say, Raging freaking Onslaught is like a card that now people are like, I gotta get my foils. It's like, relax, dude. Like you have it. It's in your box somewhere. You're absolutely, it's unreal. It's unreal. But I want to ask you quickly, because every time a set comes out, there's always this Public Enemy #1 card that gets printed or that's obviously stronger than the others or in this particular meta. It used to be Codex of Frailty, and trust me, I know because talking with Brian so often, he's absolutely just tired of getting the do you even read the cards joke. But now we have Warmonger's Diplomacy, and that is ruffling feathers and getting people all riled up. How do you respond to those kinds of initial outcries of when a card shows up and has an immediate, significant impact in the meta?
Work harder.
Yeah.
Think more. Seriously, like, look, Warmonger's Diplomacy came out, and apparently Briar was dead, and it just won US Nationals because players innovated. Apparently it was going to like wreck Lexi, and it did for the first couple of weeks. Then people innovated and found Trench of Sunken Treasure, fantastic technology. The best players in the world were playing with it. Like, apparently it kills Azalea, and sure, it can do a real number on Azalea. But look, I've watched matches online including the calling Birmingham a few weeks back of Azaleas just like absolutely demolishing opponents who played multiple Warmonger diplomacies during the game, and as because they adapted their deck, they went with less pumps and more enlightened strikes and ravenous rebels and so on and so on. So yes, the card is good. The card is really, really good. We need to make good cards. And that card is it's helped to tune the metagame and to ask some questions that people needed to think about and answer. And that's what's happened.
Well, Levi Rauch, who essentially is probably one of the best, if not the best, Azalea player out there right now, is went 4-0 in Classic Constructed, but was very vocal about the fact that Warmonger's diplomacy essentially kills Azalea. He played it in Nats and went 4-0. Now, I don't know how many opponents he played that ran Warmonger's diplomacy. Ultimately, though, it didn't necessarily affect that particular outcome. And I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but when people talk to me about big cards and how I would change them and what should be banned, a lot of the times I say, are you mad that the card is too powerful, or are you mad that people haven't figured it out for you yet? Because a lot of, and there's nothing wrong with it, because in my opinion, 95% of people out there don't have the time or the capacity to innovate like Charles Dunn does or other players do, or Michael Hamilton. These are like the Pablo Pintores of the world who are creating new decks and really pumping out these innovative solutions to problems. I find that those 95% others might just be impatient of like, hey, this card is beating the crap out of me. Can you please hurry up and tell me how to beat it? And I know I'm going to get absolutely just shredded for saying that, but it's the reality of it.
Yeah, like I think that the card is fine. If anything, it's been positive. It's just like it's a card that can interact with people doing degenerate stuff, and yeah, I think the card's good.
That's the best word is degenerate, because it has so much application to so many different things. Let's talk really quickly about Living Legend status and the Living Legend program, as we did have Breyer finally getting over the hump here in spectacular fashion. Like you mentioned, Charles Dunn winning US Nats in an innovative way as a control player, taking a traditionally hyper-aggressive build and really turning the tables full 180 on it. And I have to ask you now, is the system working the way that you envisioned it would? Are we on the right timeline? 3 and change years into the game, we're now seeing 5-6 heroes in the system. Are we on track? Is it working the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I think the system is fantastic, and I think it's really just coming into its own right about now. Like this year, I think is where you start to see like the point of it. With Oldham leaving, we're about to see Breyer go. We're going to see Icelander, and we're probably going to see Lexi go in short order. And I think that it just sort of like took a while for like a cluster of heroes to work their way within striking distance of that finish line. And we're going to see, a few of them up over the edge this year. So yeah, I think it is working. What I would say is that you will continue to see adjustments to the points for the different events, and it's really determined by two main things, like how many events are running throughout the year or within a season, but also how many new heroes are coming into the pool each year. So if you look back at the last 12 months, there's only been 5 new heroes come into Classic Constructed, being Arachnean Dynasty, Riptide, we
have Azuri and like the Prism and Vincent.
Prism and Vincent, yes, thank you very much. So we've only had 5 in the last 12 months. The next 12 months there is a lot more than that joining us into the Classic Constructed roster. And to acknowledge that and to offset that, you will see some points adjustments as we move forward into the upcoming seasons. The points will be ratcheting up to adjust for the fact that the roster will be expanding very considerably over the next 12 months. So there will be sort of like the ongoing tinkering around the edges that you will see. But fundamentally, I think that the system is very robust and is achieving the outcomes that we want to see, which is recognizing sustained excellence and elegantly evolving the metagame over time.
So that's the other question I had, is that, are we introducing enough heroes at the pace that would sustain a robust roster, knowing that, Icelander stands at 800 plus, Lexi's at 650 and change, Dash is at about 650. There's other heroes that are threatening, and we're only 1 week into national season. Are obviously said there's going to be a lot more heroes, so I would imagine. I mean, there were concerns of the fact that, hey, we might have a really shrunken roster because there's so many other big heroes that are being pushed out. So I guess is the hero introduction and the rate in which you're introducing them kind of somewhat related to how many heroes might be threatening that crossover?
I mean, that's certainly a consideration, and also just making sure that we are sort of lining up classes with when the predecessor of that class might be leaving. And it's not about like in and out within the same month, but it's kind of being mindful of like, okay, well, Icelander or whatever is, going to Living Legend. Like, we need to make sure that there's another wizard on the horizon somewhere in the future. Like, as an example. So there's that sort of like consideration that comes into play. But the biggest driver is just making products that are true to what the product is about. That's the biggest consideration for the classes or the heroes that are introduced into a product at any point in time.
The Living Legend format, I know that I'm super excited about it. I get to play some of the heroes that I don't say grew up playing. It sounds like I'm, you know what I mean, but that just
mean?
Oh yeah, we're young men, okay, James? So we don't have to talk about growing up. We're still growing up, all right?
Formerly a young man.
I've made it. I'm a man now. But what will the Living Legend format look like, James? And I think that there's been this conversation out there. I had a little bit of a debate with Fino Black. Fino says, maybe there's things that will be banned or things that will be changed, or maybe it's, will the Living Legend format include all the heroes? Is everything legal? And I just kind of want to clear that up. I think that the Living Legend format will purely be for those heroes who have attained Living Legend status. But can you explain to us a little bit about your plans for what the format will look like and when you're hoping to launch it?
Absolutely. I think that Living Legend format has a really, really key part to play in the future of Flesh and Blood. People just form such strong emotional bonds with these heroes that they've played in the past. The Prisms, the Briars, even the Starvos, the Chain. Like, people just form these really deep bonds with these heroes, and I think it's important that we provide opportunities for people to reconnect with those heroes, for forever, to be honest. So the Living Legend format will officially debut at the World Championship in Barcelona.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, I don't think it's announced yet, but there is going to be a big Living Legend event at Barcelona. So yeah, stay tuned to fabtcg.com for news about that. And there's going to be some really special prizing to celebrate the launch of this what will become an iconic format. Look, our view towards it is we don't want to exclude people, right? So like I get the argument and the merit behind, yeah, only the heroes that have attained Living Legend should be allowed to play in it, but I just think that it's wrong to exclude people from being able to sit down with their Lexi deck or their Dromai deck or whatever their deck is that they have, and to be able to participate in that event and to see whether they can like bring it to these legendary heroes of the game. And I think that that's interesting, seeing that dynamic play out. And I also think that heroes such as Viserai, for example, he's just in a whole different league when it comes to the Living Legend format. Like, he'll have Skeleta. That's a very different Viserai than what you get to play in Classic Constructed. So, things like that in and of themselves, I think, is interesting. The intention is that there will, or for the Barcelona event at least, there will be no ban list at all. Just everything goes, all goes. See what happens. But going forward, over time, as we move into 2024 and we bring the Living Legend format into other programs, and the intention is to bring it into events all the way up to the calling level from time to time, in modest offerings, right? So maybe 1 or 2 callings per year, something like that. But for it to be an important part of the overall programming schedule, when we get to that point in time, we will step back and have a look. Actually, do some adjustments need to be made? Is Scalita, Sonata, you know, healthy for this format or not? As an example, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We don't know. Is Drone of Brutality positive for the format or not? We need to actually have a look at those things before we run a calling, for example, and make some adjustments. But there are things that we will certainly consider, whether we have ban cards at all, or maybe we just have restricted cards. Maybe it's restricted. In the way of you can play with like 1 per deck, for example. So there's things that we haven't quite like 100% locked in yet. Like this is definitely how Living Legend will be forever. But what I can say is in the initial phase of it, there will be no ban list, and you can play all of the heroes at Barcelona.
Well, I owe an apology to Fino Black. Then Fino was absolutely correct, and I thought that I thought that there was absolutely no way. So this is my public apology to one Fino Black, who performed incredibly at Nationals. So
He sure did.
Two-time shout out.
Congratulations, Fino Black.
So
Yeah.
You address the concerns of one-trick players essentially losing out on their very coveted heroes, Prism players, etc. And I'm glad that there is something coming soon, and I'm happy to be here to find out that, dude, it's going to be an absolute Royal Rumble, no holds barred, crazy off the top rope showdown. I am psyched about it. Absolutely psyched about it, because I get to play Awakening again, and that is going to be unfreaking real, because there's nothing better than going second, taking it on the chin, and then pulverizing some poor clown that has no idea it's coming. It's my favorite thing. All right. Let's talk a little bit about cost, onboarding, and getting into the game as we're sort of progressing into an expanded format situation, new cards, new everything. There's always been debate about the difficulty about getting into the game, and we've seen the symptoms of trying to deal with it. Be it through massive amounts of reprints. I think Tunic's getting another preprint, which might be its 4th or 5th reprint, but there's still issues of cost getting into the game, and the conversation being that there's a lot of people just confused that there's plenty of blitz decks you can buy, but there are no pre-constructed CC lists that somebody can just pick up and jump into. So what is LSS doing to continue to address those concerns of barrier of entry, cost of entry, etc.?
Well, firstly, I think that really the card that gets pointed at the most often in terms of barrier to entry is Tunic, right? And as you mentioned, it's included in Bright Lights in the expansion slot. So, we're mindful of cards like that and providing more accessibility for the next generation of people to join the game. But I think, if you look at the broad suite of cards, like the price points on the lower rarity versions, like the rainbow foils of a lot of legendaries these days, is pretty reasonable, in the 20s, $30, maybe $40 range for a lot of cards. Trench of Sunken Treasure, $20 or less for rainbow foil. And then, some Lexi decks don't even bother with Tunic these days. So, as an example, I think that there are some, reasonable entry points into the game. I honestly don't see it as being cost prohibitive. From time to time, I see people jumping on socials and doing cost breakdowns of decks, and just some of those analysis I've seen is just disingenuous. It's like going and taking cold foil versions of cards and pricing that into deck lists, which is just not factual. But I think that it's in a reasonably good spot. Also, our game is Classic Constructed is non-rotating, so like you buy your Tunic for $200 or whatever, and you're good to go for many years. Buy a Tickler Foundry Heart, you're good to go. for many years. So I think you got to kind of give a little bit of context to like the spend that we're asking people to make, or the secondary market is asking people to make, and you get to enjoy utility of those cards for a very long time. I think you bring up a good point about the lack of classic constructed pre-con decks. It's something that's on our radar, and yeah, probably a hole in the product portfolio that we should fill. So yeah, keep your eye out for something in that space next year.
Next year. All right. Well, it's already on the docket there. But the issue I think about that, and that I want to interject, is there's always conversation about the barrier of entry also being just running into a brick wall of players who are just exceptionally skilled at the game. And a lot of players that get into the game just have this come to Jesus moment of like, oh my God, this is a lot more difficult than I thought. The players are a lot better than I thought they would be. It's not something where you can just grind your dailies on a digital client and then get the hell out of there, and then you have a deck, you roll with it. Net decking in this game, just taking a list and rolling with it, is not simplistic. And what my fear is personally is that precons are going to give people, I don't want to say a false sense of hope. It's a great skeleton to build a deck, but they're still probably going to be lacking a lot of the major pieces. I mean, if you do like a Bravo precon, are you throwing in a tech plate in there? Like, is there a premium card that you can throw in there? Are you giving them the crippling crushes and such like that? Is there at least a little bit of framework in terms of how you envision these precons to look like?
I just don't think that adding those cards in really addresses the issue that you're raising, though. It's like you can give people all the crippling crushes in the world. It doesn't mean they're going to go and win some games. Like,
Sure.
you just got to put in some effort to learn how to play the game if you want to aspire to become the greatest. And I just I would make the argument that I hope that the fact that our top players demonstrate such consistent outcomes, the Michael Hamiltons and the Pablo Pintors and the Charles Dunns of the world, who just consistently win. I hope that this can serve as a beacon of hope for people who want to become exceptional tournament players, that if you put in the work, you really understand the game, that you can rise to the top. And if that's not what your ambition is, if you just want to be a more, casual player, we're doing things more deliberately to provide opportunities for those players as well, whether it's weekly armory events with a lot of really sweet prizes, or skirmish, or a lot of like local level play. Obviously things like Round the Table coming up, being completely a social play orientated product. Like, we're providing, I think, a good spectrum of opportunities for people to play, because not everyone wants to be the world champion. Not everybody cares about becoming the national champion. But for the people who do, I think that our job is creating a game that really rewards the skill and time investment, and that when you put in the hard yards, like, you get recognized with equal outcomes reflective of that effort. So yeah, I would hope that if new players are thinking about coming into the game, they can recognize that there's lots of different levels that you can play Flesh and Blood at, with the ultimate being aspiring to become a national champion or a pro tour champion or the world champion. But it's just okay to run your local circuit as well. Just go and hang out on a Friday or a Saturday down at your local game store and play some games and have some fun. That's a totally fine way to play Flesh and Blood.
I dig it. Blitz as a format went through a lot of changes here, which I think we're coinciding with the skirmish season, and it's looking a little bit closer to how CC is played in terms of the sideboarding and that aspect. But the care that's being put into Blitz and what Blitz is going through right now through the changes, its absence from the Worlds format, where is Blitz now? And is Blitz, in your opinion, what you want it to be versus where it was when you launched it?
I think that Blitz has a really important role to play in our ecosystem. It is that fast and furious format that you can sit down and jam out a game in 10 minutes and you're good to go. And the numbers show us that it's an incredibly popular format around the world, particularly at the armory level, because a store can run a Blitz event, 3 rounds, even with a top 8, and it can be done in 3 hours or whatever. 3 rounds without a top 8, it can be done in like 90 minutes. So it's an important part for stores to be able to fit into their busy weekly OP schedules, and it generally is in general a more liked format for maybe the less uber competitive players out there. Like I always say, when you're playing Classic Constructed and you're really invested into a game, it can take 45 minutes to play the game, and it's a real grind. And taking those losses in CC can be tough because you've invested a lot of time and a lot of mental energy into playing that game. Whereas Blitz feels way more kind of like throwaway. Just play the game, bash it out, 10, 15 minutes, lose, whatever, shuffle up, go again, go again, go again, go again. And I think that, that's actually a pretty important part just for like fun factor. The reason that Blitz isn't part of the World Championship this year is it's actually a little bit it's about consideration to the players. I think that asking players to switch mental gears multiple times across a day is too much of an ask. So like asking you to change your frame of thought from CC to draft to Blitz, 3 formats, one day, it's just too much. It's just too much mental load. And I think that Blitz can have a place at the World Championship in the future. But if we do, I want World Championships to expand the number of days that it's running. So, for example, 3 days of play before the top 8. So, like, one day of CC, one day of draft, one day of Blitz to compartmentalize the thought load that we're asking of our players. So that's actually the ultimate reason why I got removed from World Champs this year. And yeah, I think that the format is in a pretty good place. I'll be honest with you though, like internally we put a lot more focus onto Classic Constructed when it comes to developing products and the amount of just sheer games that are played. We do put some amount of time into Blitz, but it's certainly a much smaller portion compared to CC. And we do sort of observe the what happens out in the wild a lot more when it comes to just like seeing the state of the metagame and Blitz. And Blitz just has a lot more heroes as well. But I think that Bright Lights will come out and inject a shot of adrenaline into the format as well. And we're pretty excited about that. I can say that the OG Data Doll gets good. So yeah, if you've been waiting for that 3 Intellect hero to have its time in the sun, you're probably are going to enjoy Bright Lights. And it's things like that which are kind of cool. Where you see these things that have been in Blitz and they've been on the fringe for a long time, and we can like sort of like make good on them as well. So like we're very mindful of like what the Blitz format is. But it is, just to be frank, a secondary priority when it comes to how we sort of develop the game.
So when Worlds 2024 is in Auckland, it's a 4-day event, is what you're saying?
There's going to be something special coming to New Zealand, but it's not the World Championship. It's just too far to ask people to travel.
WrestleMania, but a Fab. That's actually something I want to get into, and
something like that.
Darn it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about competition and where TCGs are now. It's this new kind of golden era of TCGs. You and I grew up playing when there were so many out there. It went into a downswing, but now it seems like every 3 or 4 months, there's a brand new big name title that has come out, be it One Piece, Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, Battle Spirits. There's so much out there that are not just competing for people's money and attention, but also their participation in the competitive scene. And I want to inquire about Ellis's strategies to not just compete with them, but to differentiate them, to differentiate yourselves from them, and how you guys are feeling right now, knowing that there are so many others out there basically competing for the same real estate.
Sure. Our strategy is focus on what we're doing. That's our strategy. Just make the best game we can and provide the best play opportunities that we can. And I think that that's the point of differentiation. We have absolutely unique, innovative game system that's never been seen before in our industry. None of these other games that are coming out, are in that mechanical space that Flesh and Blood occupies. None of the other publishers, bar none, are offering the level of global organized play programs that we are. So I mean, those 2 points alone are just like major differentiators. I think that the era that we're moving into is exciting, and I think that consumers need to approach it with a high degree of caution. It's exciting in one respect because I think that things like Lorcana is going to welcome in a whole new generation of fans to the TCG industry, and I think that is absolutely incredible. And I think that a lot of these other games that are coming out, particularly via the Kickstarter path, uh, most of them won't be around in another 12 to 24 months. Even some that aren't coming from the Kickstarter path, things like Battle Saga Spirits. I mean, just go on TCG Player and look at the fire sale on their product at the moment. It's not looking good. So it's hard to survive in this industry. But 4 years in, Flesh and Blood is stronger than it's ever been. We're in 50 countries, 5 languages, with the 6th language in development right now being the Japanese localization project. We have more players playing the game than ever before. We just celebrated last week, I think it was, our 4,000th store who stocks and supports Flesh and Blood. For some context, all of the Bandai stores across the world, they're at 4,400, and the Wizards Play Network is something like 6,500 stores around the world. So it provides some context of sort of where Flesh and Blood sits at in against our peers. So look, we are a major player in the industry. We have an incredibly loyal fan base around the world. They're just that bedrock, which are fantastic advocates and champions of the game, and appreciate all of the incredible content and support and promotion that all of the fans around the world lend to Flesh and Blood, and including yourself. We're very grateful for all of that daily content and buzz and activity and discussion that happens. And a fantastic network of stores who are supporting and hosting Flesh and Blood event week on week on week. There's more events running now than ever before in our history. So look, I think we're in really good shape, and we're just going to keep focusing on doing the best that we can in terms of product design, development, and program delivery.
So where's the next area of focus in terms of, regions and parts of the globe? I had, fans from Brazil, et cetera, all over that were saying, hey, when are we getting some more stuff? Do you guys have a roadmap to your expansion strategy?
Yeah, so we're very mindful about bringing on new territories, because when we go somewhere, we want to go properly with the full suite of support and programs. And a big part of what LSS is behind the scenes, people sort of probably don't quite get the level of resourcing that's required to support a new territory, including account managers who can speak the local language, who work in house, and they're engaging with the stores to make sure that each of the stores understands the programs and materials that are available to them, so that they have the best chance of creating a successful, thriving community in each of those stores. And of course, localization of materials, like every product announcement that goes out and every program that we launch these days is translated into 5 languages. So things like this, you got to set yourself up to actually succeed in each territory as you launch. So that's why we hear the fans, particularly in other areas of Latin America at the moment. I know there's a great desire for us to launch more broadly across Latin America, and it's coming. It's on the roadmap. But we just got to make sure that we get all of those foundational, building blocks in place before we pull the trigger, so that when we do go there, we do the best that we can by the fans and by the stores in each of those locations.
All right. I know I don't have you for much longer, but I do want to throw you some rapid fires here, and you can elaborate as much as you want. But we're going to talk a little bit about the future. And the first question is there any update on the stance from LSS regarding a digital platform, an official digital integration of the game?
Look, we're focused on paper, but I understand that there's tools out there that people like to use to engage with the game system and maybe prepare for some of the events. And people should do what's good for them. But for us, we're focused on pay-per play and supporting our in-person events.
I like it. Next question is, what about expansion into other media? It seems like the natural progression of popular or successful IPs in terms of be it books, comics, etc. Other games, for example, like Alpha Clash. Alpha Clash is out there. They're brand new on the scene, but they're already printing actual novels and books to support the lore associated. I know that there's lore that is being written and developed for Flesh and Blood, but how about just, what about a TV show, a cartoon, a comic book, an actual printed hardcover novel, things like that? Are these on the radar for LSS?
Look, we've always looked at what we do as creating an IP suite. We've built a world, created incredible characters, and crafted a story arc. And so far, we've applied it to the trading card game, but we definitely want to apply it to other mediums in the future. As with everything that we do, we're really disciplined about how we're allocating our resources and our focus. As soon as you start spreading yourself too thin, you start doing a mediocre job at everything instead of doing an exceptional job at the whatever it is that you're focusing on. So, look, we just got to be disciplined and focused on what our most important, function is, which is creating a great game and providing exceptional opportunities to engage and play with it. So that's where we're at the moment. But in the future, I'd love to do more with the IP.
Just find a character for me to voice. That's all I'm saying. Whoever the most loudmouth, probably Yorick. I feel like that would be up my alley. What about merchandise? There's always people who are just dying for any kind of merchandise to represent their favorite hero, as I have this Bravo in 3 different dimensions and iterations, as I have a pin and everything from Metal Fab tokens. But people are wondering, is that something that is even on your radar at all? You just mentioned that you want to focus on game design and such, but I feel like it seems like an easy win to just print Flesh and Blood on a T-shirt and jam it on a website for $20.
Yeah, but that's kind of exactly what we don't want to do, though. We don't want to just like jam our logo and stuff and slap it up for $20. What we want to do is like craft awesome things that fans feel really proud to own. So yes, merchandise is coming, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some cool merch on offer at the World Championship. So that'll be sort of the first foray into a little bit of a broader merchandising offering. And that is something that we are working with some really high-profile partners out there to bring to the fans over the coming months and into 2024.
Do you have a favorite player?
Favorite player? I don't have a favorite player, but I must say that I spend quite a lot of time watching people playing Flesh and Blood on the big screen at home. I think I even sent you some
You
photos.
did. I think it was
when you were doing some commentary with Steven a few weeks ago. So I spent a good amount of time watching people play, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And there's some exceptional players out there. It makes me feel warm inside, to be honest, being able to see people playing this game that we created all across the world and in different ways. Just it's cool.
The design team consists of yourself and Brian Gottlieb, and I'm wondering, do you guys ever? What is the most heated argument or disagreement that you guys have ever come to?
We're both like very chill. We're on the same wavelength. We have some, we debate. So like we've never had any arguments. We have disagreements, and then we like talk it through and come to a logical conclusion. But yeah, like we're I would say that the dev team in general, they're a team of quite competitive people. There can be some testy conversations, to be honest, and there's a lot of bravado and like bragging rights and all of that sort of stuff that goes on in house. So sometimes there can be some heated conversations within the wider dev team, but that's when people like Brian and maybe to a lesser extent myself step in with a little bit of like calling influence.
It's necessary though. Brian and his mediation training and his
Yeah, he's very good.
wisdom in his old age, and I will absolutely tell him that.
Absolutely.
I
He's
have
the caller. Yeah.
I have like one or two left for you. One of which is a selfish one.
So
It's
good.
when are we going to have a WrestleMania of Flesh and Blood? And I know that you and I have talked about this. How cool it would be to have all of that stuff, because I'm going through the card lists here. Choke Slam. That's a finisher. Razor's Edge. That's my ultimate favorite finisher of all time. Mandible Claw. Tribute to Legions of Doom. Tribute to Demolition.
Yep.
Don't think those got past me. That is some 80s era tag team action there. So what the hell? Could you just break? I was gonna say break the walls down. That's a Jericho reference. But can you just break through that barrier and tell us that there's that Flesh and Blood is a fighting game. It's a wrestling card game. It's two people in a one-on-one, and that there's a lot of influence coming in, and we're gonna see like a sharpshooter card or something like that. Like, just put it all to bed here.
You'll continue to see homages to it, man. It's like, it's some of the greatest sports entertainment out there, and it was a big part of my journey growing up. I just enjoy it, and we've got a lot of wrestling heads in the studio, so you'll keep seeing like a little bit of tribute here and there. But when it comes to like event production, we've talked about it before. I would love to go, all in on pyrotechnics and entrance music, and whatever the table set up in the middle of the squared circle,
And
flashing lights, strobe, the whole works, man.
the loser gets power bombed through it. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
You just show up. You're the one who lights it on fire, brings in the ladder. Yeah, trust me. And the belt is
Some
hanging.
pre-match. We need more pre-match smack talk. That's what we need.
James, I shit you not, dude. I have been saying this not just in Flesh and Blood, but in my previous career in Gwent for 4 or 5 years. I said that they used to do interviews, like pre-produced interviews, and I'm like, where are the heels? Where are the people with, like, I get it, they don't have microphone skills necessarily.
Okay. One of my favorite players, Matthew Foulkes, because he is the heel. He is that bad guy. He is the dude who does the pre-match smack talk. Yep.
Oh God, yeah. Plus, the thing about it is, like,
ever existed.
have you seen this guy? He could bench press a
The
Volvo.
only heel that's ever existed.
Yeah, no, he is the true heel. Like, there are other heels out there. For example, like Sam Dando can be a heel. He talks shit. He has what he calls psychic damage when he plays against somebody. But he plays the role because he's a nice guy. Folks, I mean, not only that, but the dude can, like, he's like, you see him just carrying a refrigerator taking the stairs just for fun. Like, that's the kind of, he's just this enormous dude, but he backs it up. He's a world-class player. He's excellent.
He does.
We got to have like an 8-person elimination, smack talk, pyro, cut promos type of tournament. I'll be a manager. It'll be great. I'll help him out. I'll do all the talking. I'm just glad that this is certainly on the radar. And I want to end this conversation with something a little heavier here, which is, we talk about the success of Flesh and Blood. We talk about how much the game has grown and really solidified itself amidst some of the most difficult circumstances of the lockdown and COVID, etc. But it's not always going to be celebrating success. So, in your eyes, where has LSS failed? Where have you come up short?
I don't feel like we've particularly come up short anywhere, to be honest. To be fair to ourselves, like we're always learning, reflecting, trying to improve, trying to strive to get better. But I think it's dangerous to be like point fingers at yourself or your co-workers and be like, yeah, you fucking failed. Like that's just the wrong mentality to have. I think that you need to have a mentality of like, yeah, we're always learning and we're always trying to get better. And like sometimes you just gotta like have a little bit of self-care as well. Like I'm someone who like is pretty hard on myself and pretty hard on our entire team of like pushing people towards excellence. But you just can't beat yourself up and beat up your co-workers as well. Like morale is a really key part of like creating a healthy, thriving organization and just making people feel empowered to make decisions and make mistakes is really important. Like we're all human and we're all make mistakes, and if you can't accept that you're going to make mistakes and learn from it and grow from them, like you're gonna struggle, man. Like that's just part of being a human being. But what's important is not giving up. Like it might sound corny or whatever, but like the old saying of so often the difference between success and failure is not giving up, and it's just so true. Um, so I just think that as an organization, and I hope and I believe it sort of emanates from my leadership of just having resilience, like and belief that we have a mission that we're all aligned with, which is bringing people together in the flesh and blood through the common language of playing great games. It is our guiding compass. It's what all of our decision making orbits around, and uh, we do our best. And sometimes it doesn't work out as good as we would have hoped for. But I don't think that you can say that any of the things that we have done have been abject failures. And even just anecdotally, like maybe you're wondering what the hell is all of this shit stacked up behind me here. Well, it's actually like the bottom of it's the trestle part of like a whole bunch of tables because we're in the process of moving right now. Um, it's literally moving day tomorrow. So, well, why are we moving? It's because we are doing awesome. It's because Legend Story Studios is going from strength to strength. It's because we've outgrown our current premises. It's because our team has gone from 8 people a few years ago to 45, and we need to move somewhere bigger and better to support us in the next chapter of our journey. And it's all part of evolution, and like maybe like the tangible element of our environment is one way of like looking at that evolution of growth, but on a more human level, we're all growing as people in our competency and our capability, and um, I think that you will see the the great foundation that we've established over the last 4 years actually continue to get better over the coming 4 years, 10 years, and so on. And our industry has very long lead time. So things that you guys are seeing coming up like bright lights, that's work that we did a year ago. And the things that we're working on now, you're going to see in a year's time from today. And man, I think that the products that are coming through the pipeline in 2024 and bright lights as well, it's our best work yet. And that only happens because of the things that we've learned and our just ongoing drive to create excellence for our fans around the world.
I always start off the podcast by saying you're not losing if you're learning, because I don't have the skill set or the capacity, not necessarily, to be a world-class player. So I told myself that you have to take your victories even in losses. And a lot of that philosophy, I feel, is you're very well articulating right now, which is, not everything is going to be a home run, but if you slap together a single and a double, you're still scoring a run. And I think and progress is important. And I think that's, like you said, you guys came onto the scene in arguably some of the most difficult circumstances for a new company without an established IP to come out here and challenge for in an industry that has options of playing online, and you're thriving, and that's amazing. And I congratulate you on that, because this game is incredible, and that's because of the team that is working there that are now moving to bigger digs and better places, and that's awesome, man. I appreciate your time, James, and now here's the final opportunity for you to just blow up the internet with any kind of. We already learned about the Living Legend format debuting in Barcelona. Is there any other kind of wicked cool news? Any spoilers you want to drop here? Any minds you want to blow? Now's the time.
Just go and check out the Run the Table announcement that just dropped this morning. There's like a ton of new cards previewed in that announcement. So go and digest that. It is a social play multiplayer format product, but look at some of these cards through the lens of what they can do in CC and in Blitz as well. And go go and get your brewing hats on. And I'll see you in Barcelona for the keynote speech where we will be revealing the 2024 product roadmap and organized play roadmap. And I tell you, it's going to be our biggest year yet.
I love to hear it. All right. Well, there he is, Mr. James White, the founder, creator, the godfather himself of Flesh and Blood. Thank you very much for joining the show, James.
Thank you, Matt. Yep. I'll see you in Barcelona, buddy.
Oh, I like to hear that. That's great news. Beauty. I'm gonna get my. I gotta start. It's sunny there, right? The weather's good. I gotta. That means I gotta keep on my diet for another like 2 months. Like, damn it. I have this gigantic tub of M&Ms that were calling to me. I was like in Vegas, and I was like, perfect. Hit the pool, no problem. No sugar, no nothing. And now, there's a silver lining to that struggle. Friends, thank you so much for joining the Instant Speed podcast. To our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, go to kayfabecards.com. Be who you want to be at Kayfabe Cards. And to our Patreon supporters, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. Catch you next time on ISP.
Thank you.
Well, I work